Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Monday, November 16th of 2020, and I'm one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me this week is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey.
Third time's a charm, Logan. Third time's a charm.
Podcasts are tricky, guys. You know what I mean? We got there in the end. We figured it out. Trevor, how has your weekend been?
It has been glorious.
Yeah.
Completely messed up sleep schedule-wise. I've been playing games all night and sleeping half the days, but it has been wonderful.
Yeah. In case you didn't know, in case you were buried under a rock or listened to this 5 years in the future, in which case, hello. Today
we
was
hope things got better.
Yeah. Today, knock on wood. Today is the first Monday after the PS5 came out, so Trevor has been playing it all weekend long, since Thursday to get kind of his impressions. He also played the Xbox Series X.
Yep.
As well this past week, so he has some thoughts on that maybe as well, but we don't have time for them right now. We're talking about the PlayStation 5 here. The first question I actually have for you, Trevor, is not about a game. I want to know, just in terms of the UI and functionality of the PS5, what are your kind of initial thoughts?
So I talked about a little bit of this kind of stuff in this week's That Nerdy Site show with Cameron, where we kind of did a big overall look at my time with the Series X, my time with the PS5, and then a handful of games and stuff. With the PS5's new UI is definitely taking some getting used to. I'm still trying to figure out where certain things are that I'm used to just from 7 years with the PS4.
Sure.
The first day or two, I didn't know where to find the notifications, because I'm just so used to holding the PS button, going up, and seeing notifications right there. And what it is now is they've added a little home menu kind of thing at the bottom of the screen that instead, you don't hold the PS button, you just tap the PS button to bring that up, and then you can kind of scroll through those things, and notifications are down there. And that menu is mildly customizable, so you can kind of it's basically a little taskbar on your desktop kind of thing. You can kind of quick access a few different things on there. It's not as customizable as I would like. In particular, one of the things that I was hoping would be on there that isn't, and so maybe it'll be something that gets patched in as an option down the line, is as I've been attempting to stream and video capture stuff through the PS5, the PS4 was like this as well. You have to go in and change a setting on HDCP or something. You have to turn that off to capture appropriately, and so you have to go into settings and you have to go to that thing and then you have to go turn it off. It'd be great if that was a thing I could just snap to that bottom bar when I'm doing this, and then switch it off when I'm just going to be playing a game or watching a media app or something like that. So hopefully they kind of tweak that and play around with that. But so far it is a much it is a complete overhaul. So it's relearning where everything is, how things work, what's new, what was maybe there on the PS4 that I just didn't know about, but is getting showcased differently in this iteration, compared to my few days with the Series X, which is a very similar. I mean, it's the same UI that you can get on a Xbox One or Xbox One X now, because they didn't reinvent the wheel. They've been, tweaking it over the last generation, but the UI is effectively the same across those generations on Xbox. So that's, even though I'm not in the Series X as much, and have never been in the Xbox ecosystem as much, that one's weirdly easier for me to navigate because they didn't throw everything around in a blender and move it around stuff for me. But other than that, some of the new features and stuff in the UI included in the UI, notably the gameplay help kind of thing, is pretty cool, because when you tap the PS button, in addition to that little taskbar that comes up, you also get a whole bunch of activities cards that'll be hey, here's things that you can do in this game based on, and it's like registering based on where you are in the game, and maybe what you're trying to do. And some of it's like, hey, here's trophies that you can be going after, but other things it's just like, hey, here's the mission you're on, and we estimate it's going to take about this much longer to complete. So it's like it's a cool little thing that like gives me a sense of like, okay, I'm feeling a little peckish for food. How much longer is it going to take for this little section of the game? Oh, it's going to be another half hour. Yeah, I can go ahead and finish that up, and then I'll go grab a bite to eat. So that's a cool new feature. Yeah. And also, like, you can. It seems like you can basically use that to hop around to other points in the game. I haven't really played around with that so much yet, but like I was playing Sackboy, and there was like one of the cards was like, hey, do this next level, and then another card was like, hey, go to the costume vendor and buy custom outfits and stuff like that. And I think if I had clicked that, it would have just taken me to like the costume vendor like screen of the game. So yeah, it's cool little stuff like that. And then within those cards, there might be descriptions for like little help things, and this is where like you see the game help videos that they've kind of lauded and featured. When I was playing Astra's Playroom, I was trying to find a puzzle piece, which is like one of the hidden collectibles in those worlds, and I went to the game help menu, and like it was broken down like puzzle piece 1, puzzle piece 2, puzzle piece 3, I think, or something like that. And it was basically like, hey, here's the puzzle piece I'm looking for. The video kind of starts to autoplay. You can full screen it, and I was like, okay, where is that? Oh, I'm like right there, and oh, sure enough, it was just like I didn't look around a corner or something like that. So, yeah, it's cool the way some of that stuff is broken out and just like is recognizing where I'm at in a game, in order to kind of like guide play. I think it'll be really cool for like multiplayer games like Call of Duty or something like that, because you can basically just immediately jump from those cards into a game mode that you're trying to play or that you're interested in playing. You can hop into zombies, or you can hop into the campaign, or you can hop into deathmatch or whatever. So yeah, there's cool features in there, but it's mixed in with like just trying to relearn where things are,
figure out where everything's
and how
at.
things are. Like one of the things that I haven't dug too deeply in is the trophy sharing stuff. One of the things that like I liked in the PS4 era was like, hey, there's a checkbox if you want to include the screenshot from the game, or if you don't. I haven't been able to figure out the equivalent of that on the PS5, so I got like my Bugsnax Platinum trophy, and the image from the game was just kind of nah, or the video that it captured too, because that's another cool thing that it's doing is it'll capture like a handful of like gameplay leading up to the trophy. It's basically, it pulls in, like it rewinds like 15 seconds from when you pop the trophy, so you can kind of see the moment that leads up to it a little bit. And for what I was doing in Bugsnax, it just wasn't like an entertaining thing. It was just a trophy cleanup thing to get the last trophy for the platinum. So I didn't want to share that or the screenshot from that. I just wanted to maybe share the trophy logo. I couldn't figure out how to do that easily, so I just went and like did a screen grab from the mobile app instead and posted that. So there are still like definitely things I'm gonna like try and figure out here and there. But overall, it's a cleaner UI. It's ridiculously faster, so being able to like hop around to games or go through my library and all that kind of stuff is super quick and super smooth. So yeah, I'm enjoying it so far, but it's there's a learning curve to it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we won't linger too long on the UI because I could get into the nitty-gritty there, but
here we are at 9 minutes into the show.
I know, I was going to say, the UI, tell me more. But we'll dive into, the first game here. And this is actually the one that I, weirdly enough, think I kind of want to hear the least about.
Okay.
Because I'm just excited to experience it myself, which is actually Astra's Playroom.
Okay.
Because everything I've been seeing about this game and kind of its celebration of like PlayStation has me so incredibly excited to just dive into this game. But yeah, give me the elevator pitch on Astra's Playroom.
So the elevator pitch that I effectively told Cameron as well is, it is embarrassing that Nintendo, with all of their storied history and legacy of games, hasn't given us a game with as much fan love and fan service as Astro's Playroom does for the PlayStation. Like,
I love that.
The game is broken out into 4 main levels, each of which is focusing on a different component of the PS5. So you've got like the cooling fan, you've got the SSD, you've got the I don't remember what the other couple are. But it's like each of those is, you know, the inner workings of the PS5, but each of those levels is also centered around one of the PlayStation eras. So like the cooling springs level that I've did a Let's Play of and uploaded to our YouTube, youtube.com/thatnerdysite.
Go watch it.
Which is where you're at if you're watching the video version of this podcast. That is all centered around the PlayStation 3. And so and what that means is effectively like the hidden collectibles that you find throughout the level are they're called artifacts, and they are peripherals, or they are like the DualShock 3, they are the PSI, they are move controllers, and stuff like that. And you find them by, you know, going off the beaten path and uncovering that stuff. And it's just such a beautiful love letter to PlayStation and to everything PlayStation. Each of the levels kind of ends with kind of a, you know, the final like little denouement of the stage effectively is effectively putting you in the you know, menu UI or something like that. So for the PS3 level, you're looking kind of at the, you know, blue cross media bar kind of thing, and you're hearing the sounds of the PlayStation 3. You're hearing like that startup sound. So I mentioned on Twitter the other day, like playing the PlayStation 1 level and kind of getting to that end, I was surprised at how overwhelmed I was with like emotional nostalgia for just hearing those original kind of like PlayStation sounds and seeing kind of the original like boot up and that kind of stuff. It's just like there were multiple times I got like choked up playing this little platformer game just because of how much it's celebrating PlayStation. Throughout the game, there are little other Astros that are kind of dressed up and enacting scenes or little like images from, you know, a plethora of PlayStation games, many more than I could even recognize, certainly. But there's like a lot of love there. The trophies themselves, there's a lot of like love and care put into what pops trophies, what the trophies are called. The example I gave with Cameron is in one of the levels, it'll start like raining down during one of the sections, and if you find cover from that heavy rain, you will pop a trophy that says Jason, as just of course a nod to that Quantic Dream game. So yeah, there's just so much like love and care put into the game. Things that you like will be platforming around on will be the triggers from like a PS3 controller or something like that. You will there's a section of the game where one of the things that Astrobot does great is it kind of gives you these little sections where you're gonna it's of course really trying to showcase what the DualSense can do. And so there'll be little parts of a mission where you'll hop into a little thing and it'll kind of transform your robot into a different thing. So like in the Cooling Springs level, you transform into a little like springy robot, and you kind of have to bounce around like a little 2D area using the triggers and using the motion controls. There's a section in the PS1 level where you basically turn into a ball that you control by like, you know, pushing the touchpad. And you kind of, in order to like get shot out into like the main areas of that, you roll onto the original PlayStation open button, and that like ejects you into the area. And there's just it's filled with like little nods to that kind of stuff that you just like see, and the deeper you dig, the more love there is to find in there.
I will say as a final point that I've seen a few different people on Twitter kind of bandy about the question of like, is it the best packaged in-game of any console launch? And pretty much every opinion and thought I've seen has just been people loving it and kind of champion just how fun it is and kind of how multi-generational. I feel like its appeal is, whether you've been someone who's played PlayStation since the PS1 like us, or came in at the PS2 or 3, or is someone who is a 4 or 5 year old kid now. It is just a delight to kind of experience.
Yeah, I mean it is a great game in and of itself. The fact that it just has all these trappings of love makes it just that much more of a better experience for people that have been with PlayStation for 20 plus years now. Just getting to hop in there and see just the reverence that the game clearly has for everything that has come before it, be it references to, there's Parappa in there. There's of course a Crash Bandicoot is in there somewhere.
I saw the Crash.
It's just there are so many great little nods that, and so many of them, because I have very big kind of gaps in my PlayStation knowledge just because of like the certain game types that I enjoy or don't enjoy. There were definitely moments where I'm like, this is clearly a reference to something. I don't get what the reference is to, but I still love that somebody will, or that it's in there for somebody, that they're going to enjoy it. And there are a ton of articles out there that are like, here are all the Easter eggs in Astro's Playroom, that I just like want to dive in and consume all of those because I love, that little level of nerdity that's in there.
Yeah. But shifting gears from Astro's Playroom, we then go to the heavy hitter, the giant of the PS5 launch. That is, of course, Bugsnax.
Of course.
Trevor, what are your thoughts and impressions of the much hyped Bugsnax?
Bugsnax is such a wonderfully, weirdly charming game.
That's what I've heard.
I had a great time
weird
with
is like the big word.
I played through the whole thing in like one sitting. Admittedly, it was a very long sitting.
Wow.
Basically overnight. But I played through the whole game, just kind of like kept enjoying it and kept wanting to kind of see what was next and go, find the next Bugsnax or figure out how to catch this one that was like evading me or that I hadn't figured out. And so, Bugsnax, for those that don't know, is like, the most direct parallel that people, immediately pointed to was like Pokemon Snap. You are... an investigative journalist going to this island with these little creatures that are part bug and part snack, and you are cataloging them. You're trying to figure out what has happened to the people on the island, as well as what's really going on with these Bugsnax. What's their deal? Why is it when people eat them, their limbs turn into whatever snack they represented, and what is going on there? There's like a weirdly dark humor to it, especially later in the game, and especially the end game of Bugsnax gets like, a little black comedy kind of stuff, which I loved and certainly gobbled up. But there's just also it's a great puzzle adventure game because there will be, you'll see a snack flying around and you're gonna think, okay, how do I get that? It's on fire, so I can't just throw my trap at it, or I can't just grab it, with a grapple hook out of there. I need to put the fire out first before I can get it. So how do I attract it down into the water or to a Bugsnax that is frozen that can kind of like offset it? How do I what is the strategy around that? And in many cases, there are going to be multiple strategies that you can kind of like apply and play around with. And then, apart from all of that, there's other fun characters. The Grumpuses are the citizens of Snacksburg that you're trying to kind of bring back to the city. They've all kind of left and they're scattered around the island, so you have to try and like go meet them and then like solve a few kind of little side quests to bring them a few different Bugsnax, and then that'll convince them to come back. And so there's a whole bunch of like little side missions and stuff that you can do with them, and each of them has like, a bit of their own story arc, and each of them has a reason that they came to this island, that they left like the world they knew behind to come to this, theoretically uninhabited island with these just weird creatures. So kind of getting to dig a little deeper into each of their pasts is a little fun. They're just a lot of fun, colorful characters that get made even more colorful by grabbing a straw bee and feeding it to them, and suddenly their arm is strawberries.
Yeah, it's one of the words I've heard, been about the most for sure is just it's a weird game, and kind of delightfully weird in the sense that like it's rare we get games that are just so unabashedly strange and weird and that embrace it so much, and that have been embraced, I think, by the industry so much.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to hear that that's exactly what it is, and that it does get pretty dark, black comedy as it goes on. But we'll move on from Bugsnax. I won't keep the hunger and masses waiting. Trevor, tell me all about Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Spider-Man Miles Morales is a great follow-up to 2018 Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It definitely it's very interesting seeing this game in the shadow effectively of Into the Spider-Verse, because it is a different, approach to Miles Morales, but it still is touching on a lot of the same kind of touchstones that Into the Spider-Verse has for Miles Morales. Obviously, style and music is very much, a part of his life as well as the game. And it's very much, Spider-Man 2018 was a Peter Parker that has been doing this for 8 years. So this is very much the origin story of a Spider-Man game, where it's Miles, like at the beginning of the game, Miles doesn't have, his couple standout powers that he gets throughout the game of the Venom Strike ability and his camouflage abilities. So you get those, and he kind of learns and grows over the course of the game. And story-wise, they do an interesting thing. They kind of take him out of Brooklyn and put him into Harlem, so he's a fish out of water in Harlem. And so he's trying to, in addition to grappling with his newfound powers, he's also having to grapple with like this new neighborhood that he doesn't feel a part of. And it's very much how he's trying to grow in both of those areas. He's trying to become, more a part of his community, both as Miles and as Spider-Man, alongside him trying to, develop those powers and learn those abilities. Peter is off, on vacation effectively. So New York is Miles's to protect. It's definitely a smaller story, as kind of everybody said going into it, than 2018, especially after beating the game. I've hopped into remastered, and just like the checklist of things to do in every little section of the map is like 2 or 3 times as long in 2018 Spider-Man as it is in the Miles Morales version. But that, I think, benefits the game greatly. It's edited down, it's streamlined. It is just kind of a solid 12 to 15 hour experience kind of thing of just enjoying Miles' story, with some of the characters from the first game, alongside a brand new handful of characters, to kind of further the building of Insomniac's Spider-Man universe.
Yeah. How does it feel? How does the just minute-to-minute gameplay of Miles Morales improved from where 2018 Spider-Man was at?
It feels largely the same, in the best of ways, in that like combat is still great. Combat especially is great when you become airborne and you're fighting enemies, off the ground. That's where the combat and the racking up crazy 100 times combos becomes really engaging and fun. And the new abilities. So the biggest difference in combat are, Peter had more gadgets. Peter had 8 gadgets to kind of play with. Miles only has 4, but offsetting those 4 gadgets are his new Venom powers, where he gets, he can kind of, I didn't even think about it until I was listening to the spoiler cast that Kind of Funny did, with one of the creative directors kind of talking about the fact that Miles's Venom powers are AoE attacks, like, so they're hitting a range of enemies instead of just like the one-on-one combat that you're usually doing in Peter Parker Spider-Man. So like that changes up the dynamic. You can drop in and you can just like wreck 5 guys at once and then kind of like start picking them off the rest of the way. But then his real, maybe the game changer, is his camouflage ability, which comes in especially handy in like the stealth sections of the game, because if you screw up and get spotted, you can go into camouflage and then you can go like hide up in the rafters again, and the enemies will, it turns back into a stealth game. Whereas like in 2018, if the enemies see you, there's no real way to get out of that without like leaving and coming back. So it makes it more accessible and approachable for that kind of gameplay approach. But yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's a ton of fun. I played through the game and then I immediately basically booted it up and just kind of like burned through a New Game Plus run of the game to get like the last trophy I needed for the platinum on that one. And then so I basically, my order of operations was I played Astro, I played Miles, and then I played Bugsnax, and now I am playing Spider-Man Remastered because I had such a great time with Miles Morales that I just wanted to go and play more Spider-Man again. I wanted to swing around that city again. The big things that the PS5 version is really touting are, of course, they have their,
he's got a new face.
Yes, Peter has a new face, which is, it's whatever. It's not a big thing, especially Miles Morales, where he's in there a little bit at the beginning and then he's gone for most of the game. So you get introduced to it. And it's like, okay, yeah. But even as I'm playing like the remastered Peter Parker one, it's like I'm very quickly like forgetting what old Peter looked like. Just because I'm just like getting accustomed to the new one after a handful of hours of gameplay with him. So it's not a big deal. It's whatever. It's still Yuri Lowenthal doing a great performance there underneath. But the big thing I was going to say is with the PS5, of course, they have like the 30 frames per second mode that has like crazy ray tracing and all these beautiful lighting effects that like certainly add a ton to the game. Or there's 60 FPS mode that you can kind of like take some of that higher performance stuff away and just kind of like focus on basically like handling twice as smoothly, which when it's working is great and feels like incredible. And I was okay not having the ray tracing on the PS4 version, so getting a smoother flow of movement and stuff is really fun. But it's also in Miles Morales in particular where my PlayStation has had the most problems. I did like I chugged a little bit there when I was trying to do it in 60 FPS mode, and that may have been just because this was 10 hours into a gaming session or something like that. The system had been going for a while. I don't know, but it did also lead to like my first crash of the PS5, and it was a crash in that I was trying to close the game to restart it because it was starting to chug, and it went to a menu, or it went to a screen saying like closing the game or app, and then just stayed there for 15 minutes before I finally was like, all right, I'm gonna hard reset the thing, and doing that corrupted some save file or whatever, so I lost like an hour and a half of gameplay that I had to go back and redo. But I've been playing Spider-Man Remastered completely in 60 FPS, and it's been working great, and it's ridiculously like fun how smooth combat flows in that, and yeah, I'm just having a great time with that.
Very nice. You've also played a few of the games, even finished in those, starting with, I believe, Sackboy you've played a little bit of, obviously.
After Astro's Astro's Playroom, that's a great platformer in and of itself, and so I was like, all right, let's go see what the other platformer that came out, Sackboy, A Big Adventure, what that's like. And it is, like, I've never really got into the Little Big Planet games myself. I played, like, a handful of levels of the first one probably, but then I was like, this just isn't really for me. It still very much kind of has that feel, but in a more maybe, I guess it's not even 3D. It's a little 3D-ish, but it's like 2.5D, let's say, in terms of the platforming. It's a very much like a go through, collect all the little dream bubbles, collect all like the hidden costumes and stuff throughout. It is incredibly beautiful in like even the detail of Sackboy. Like when there's a close-up shot of him, you see like little strayed threads off of his face or whatever
Okay.
that are like little stray hairs kind of thing. Like the graphical fidelity of the system is phenomenal and really being showcased there. But then just like the crafted world around him also looks incredibly beautiful. The music is great. Which I'm hearing a lot of, like, oh, like Little Big Planet music was always great. And I just, again, not having played any of those games.
Is Stephen Fry still narrating it?
Stephen Fry is not in there. There's a lady narrator in there so far in terms of who I've met up with. I don't know who the voice actress is, but it is some like British lady playing Scarlet, I believe is the character's name. And then there's the only other voice I think I've heard so far is the big bad guy named Vex. And he was basically like in the opening cutscene. That's really all I've dealt with him so far. I've only played like a few levels of it. It's interesting to see how, like, playing it single player, how designed for like 4-player co-op or up to 4-player co-op it is, because it's very much like each of the levels is, a race to get the highest score with the other people. And so if you're playing like single player, you can just get all of the bubbles and get the high score and not have any problem with that. And you are first place every time basically. But yeah, it's charming. It's wonderful. And I look forward to going back to it and kind of enjoying it more. But it was after Bug Snacks in particular, it was like, okay, I want to bounce around and see what some of the other things the system has to offer are. Because I got the pre-order version of the game, I got extra little costumes for Jin from Ghost of Tsushima. So that's who I've been, like, my Sackboy has been running around in like the Jin armor and stuff like that, as well as Deacon from Days Gone is in there, Sam from Death Stranding, and I don't remember who the last one is. Some other like late gen like mascot type of character is in there. And so yeah, there's like just again, it is another game that kind of oozes charm and wears that like love and charm on its sleeve. It'll be interesting to see kind of the response of this game without the media molecule, like go build out your own levels and all that kind of stuff. The fact that this is just a platforming game and there's no, create a like world kind of thing outside of that.
Create a world.
I think maybe limits, or at least it just kind of like keeps the game within a specific scope. But I think that's, I think being able to focus on platforming, they're just making the platforming as good as best they can kind of thing.
So those are all the games you're currently playing for the PS5. So what are your, to kind of bring it together here, what are your overall initial thoughts and impressions on the PlayStation 5 after the first 4 or 5 days now that you've had it?
I mean, I like really good. In particular, I think the way all of these launch lineup games complement each other really well. Is certainly something to be applauded. And that's not counting, the fact that there's Demon Souls out there for the people that want that kind of experience.
Valhalla.
There's Assassin's Creed Valhalla. There's Watch Dogs Legion now for $30 at Best Buy if you want. There's Call of Duty that came out. One of the ones that I've played a little bit of that we haven't talked about is The Pathless, which is it's an Annapurna game. It is by the people who made Abzu, which has in and of itself lineage from Journey, and it is very much Abzu / Journey plus Breath of the Wild in kind of its design and game aspirations. But I think it's going to be ultimately a smaller Breath of the Wild, in that it is a big open world puzzle game that you're just kind of like let off the leash and go and explore. And there's not like a ton in the way of combat, at least in what I've experienced so far. But it's puzzles. You have an eagle that's flying around with you that kind of helps you soar around the world, and you can kind of upgrade that eagle in order to be able to flap your wings and fly to higher and higher heights. And you're you're kind of unlocking sections of the game, one by one in order to fight the big bad. And it's really cool so far. It's a little, especially coming off of something like Abzu, it's a little darker than I would have liked to see. Like I would love to see them playing more around with color, and maybe the game does do that and it just hasn't opened up into that. But it seems like it's very much this is the dark world because, the world is ending and light has been taken from the world. So everything's like dark forest. And I think it loses a little bit of like the vibrancy that Abzu had because of that.
Or Journey.
Yeah, certainly. But ultimately it's still it's another game that I'm looking forward to going back to, even as somebody that didn't like Breath of the Wild, because I think this will be a more manageable size of things.
Yeah.
And my as I've said in many times, my biggest issues with Breath of the Wild were like the destructible weapons and stuff. It made combat pointless effectively in that game because well, why do I want to go and like break my weapons just to get the same or worse weapons in a fight? I would just rather avoid fights. And the fact that this game doesn't really have that and it is more about the puzzles and the exploration, I think appeals to me a little bit more. So it's another one that I'll hop into and kind of sit down and basically be like, all right, I'm going to go solve a puzzle shrine thing or two today. And also like running around that world is fun. You're basically dashing around the world, or you're like flying with your bird, gliding with your bird friend, and there are talismans scattered around the world that you shoot with your bow and arrow. And as you shoot them, they like refill your dash meter, so you can like chain some of them together and just really start like sailing across the landscape of that world in fun and interesting ways, I think.
Very nice.
So yeah, so in the overall scheme of things, like all these games,
fantastic,
like mesh very well together to make for an incredible launch lineup that's a ton of fun to play, and there's tons of opportunities out there for whatever kind of game you're looking for. There's probably something to hit for you on the PS5.
Well, very good. We'll wrap it up there. Trevor, do you have any shout-outs that you would like to shout out before we dive into the wrap-up?
Not a formal shout-out article or anything, but I do want to give a shout-out to everybody affected by the US Gamer closing.
Yes.
It seems
Absolutely.
It seems like unfortunate that team's going to basically, they've got through the end of the year, but then they're going to be let go, it looks like. Just another casualty of COVID / businesses buying publications like US Gamer that maybe don't have a place in that market. I saw that going around today, that a handful of people are out there looking for new work, and that's never a great thing.
Absolutely. All of our thoughts go out to everyone affected by that at US Gamer. Transition from there, that is the show. Thank you all for listening. If you like what you heard, you can go support us over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, like all of our wonderful patrons have. Your support means the world to us and has kept the lights on and made shows like this one and like that D+ show happen. So we are incredibly appreciative of that. You can go check out all the different tiers and goals over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. We're in the process kind of continually of tweaking them and changing things, adding, subtracting things. So go over there, check that out, and support us. We really do appreciate it, and it means the world to us. Otherwise, you can go support us by liking, subscribing, and sharing the podcast on podcast services around the world with all of your friends. Go give us those 5 stars on iTunes. It really does help. And again, we're trying to be in the top 300 video game podcasts in Australia. So every review and like does help there. Otherwise, you can go find Trevor over at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trevor, anything that you want to plug or shout out?
I'll give a shout out to this week's episodes of That Retro Gaming Show. one of which went live yesterday as of this air date, and one that will go live tomorrow as of this air date. Both of them being in the future as of this recording date. But I have also just finished recording them, like right before we sat down to record this. It is going to be Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. Are the next games up on the NES
I saw your
Classic.
tweet. Yeah, it's very funny.
And yeah, those games, I'm not great at them. And
hard.
so come and watch me struggle. Like, in the original Donkey Kong, will I make it through level 1? Come find out.
They're difficult. They are not. Yeah, they're hard. Especially, I feel like the second Donkey Kong in particular.
Donkey Kong Jr. I make way better progress in Donkey Kong Jr. than I did in Donkey Kong. Yeah.
Maybe it's just like reflex at this point for like the original Donkey Kong. Then like I've just done enough to where like I have it down. But like Donkey Kong Jr. I've always felt like it was a little bit trickier.
They're definitely like they're different platforming styles. Like with Donkey Kong, you are Jumpman. You're jumping up and across the ramps, and you're climbing ladders and stuff. Versus Donkey Kong Jr., you are Donkey Kong Jr. climbing vines and progressing around and jumping across different areas and stuff like that. So it feels like there are fewer things that are trying to kill you in Donkey Kong Jr. And that's
probably true.
Yeah. So I made way more progress in Donkey Kong Jr. than I did in the original Donkey Kong.
I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited for Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. Let's Plays to be on the channel in the future as well. Whenever we figure out things in mind, because I'll absolutely do Let's Plays of that. So you can go find Trevor at Trevor J. Starkey. That's a great shout out. I'm really just all the different Let's Plays Trevor is doing on the YouTube side of things are all great. You should go watch all of them. I pretty much watch them immediately when they drop, because they are like 15-20 minute highlights of my day.
You can see my very first like playing anything on the PS5. I went in and played Astro's Playroom and recorded that all for the site. Uploaded that. Had like a hiccup in there where, because I was using like the 3D audio headsets, which is another thing that's great about the PS5. The 3D audio is really cool, and how it's incorporated into things we didn't really talk about. But because I was using that, it changed the settings so that like my mic controller wasn't working for the section that I needed the mic controller in the game. And so it was like, I'm sitting there blowing into the mic controller because it's like, blow the fan, and nothing happened. So you see me struggle for that a little bit. I basically ended the Let's Play there originally and was like, I'm gonna go try and figure this out. Went into settings, immediately figured it out. So I started the Let's Play back up and basically was like, all right, we figured it out. So let's progress and finish through the game, through that level of the game. So you can go check out kind of that. My first hands-on impressions and experience of the both the DualSense controller as well as Astro's Playroom in the Cooling Springs level of that game.
Go check it out. I've not checked that one out because again, I'm just ready to dive in that game all by myself. But it is a great first impression of the PS5 and Astro. You can go find me at Lefty Logie or Lefty Logie, Loggy, on the internet. I will second Trevor's shout out and also just say stay tuned for all the different kinds of PS5 content we will have rolling out in the weeks to come. It will be plentiful, especially when I also get my PS5 eventually.
Fingers crossed for you.
Amazon screwed me over. We're looking forward to that soon, hopefully. You can go find That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site all across the internet. A home for podcast reviews, impressions, features, Let's Plays, all the goodies. And until next time, play your games and be good to each other.